Let's get started. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Tech Report Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Drake. I'm joined by Scott Wasson and Jeffrey Kampman. The Tech Report Podcast is the official podcast. There's some unofficial podcasts running around. We don't sanction them. We do not approve anything they say. We do get a cut. But the Tech Report Podcast is the official podcast of the Tech Report at techreport.com, the number one place for news and reviews in the computer hardware world. Now, let's see. I haven't been on the podcast in a while. And, you know, I've been on this podcast for 8+ years now. And I'm generally the voice that kicks things off. I'm generally the voice that reads the episode title. I do all of our sponsorship bits. I inject what can only be described as weak humor into the show, if that. I mean, it's weak at best. And occasional commentary, a few rants now and again. So, you know, in the past few episodes, for a variety of reasons, traveling and family and things, I haven't been able to be on the show. And so, you know, in a situation like that, I sort of, and there's my phone making noise. I still haven't figured that out. I travel over to the comment section for some of the episodes that I've missed. And, you know, I expect, you know, when the host is out, someone's, you know, going to make a comment. Oh, when's Jordan coming back? And, you know, it's kind of sucked not having Jordan. And there was none of that. I mean, I'm looking through posts about best episode ever, really like the content on this episode. Y'all are aware I've been hosting this show, right? I mean, like, is that a known thing? I'm not sure if people... I'm Jordan. Scott he's the editor. Do we need to do a post about this, or... Completely missed it. I mean, I'm looking through. Just something. I just need a one SSID broadcast. Where is that? Where is that guy? Cassidy. He's always not a single Miss Jordan this episode. No, just nothing. How about let's see with the chat. Oh, Jordan. Yep, there we go. Someone goes, Jordan was gone. See, that's exactly my point. So, yeah, but now I'm back, and then back, I guess, Scott, only really to say goodbye officially. After so very, very long.
Dude, yeah. Dude.
How does...
He dropped the bomb.
I know, I just got cut straight to the chase after more weak humor. Yeah, there you go. See, everyone's really piling in on the chat room. Who's the guy in the top right? No, but I guess I told you, I had a conversation with you about a month and a half ago, Scott, I guess.
Yeah. I've been holding it back, Jordan. Holding it in. Barely.
It's like...
Barely
it's like an emotional finger in the dike. So as soon as this goes, if you need to let some stuff out, man, I mean, I get it.
I'm not going to make it through this. So you just keep talking. I'm going to be quiet and try not to say too much. But see, how many years are we looking at?
It's 8.5 plus.
Dude.
I'm going to be sending, what I might likely do for kicks is I might send, of course, Nathan can look it up, our very first episode. Might be fun to tack in the first few minutes of that at the very end of this episode in the post-production version.
It's the Muppet Babies version of Jordan.
There was definitely a pitch change. I think there was a testosterone difference in general. I think my facial hair has considerably changed. And your son in the chat room says that he did go back and listen to the first episode. So yeah, there's some good memories there. It's funny because I started podcasting for another forum, the OCF podcast. I'll keep this History Channel special and the History of the Tech Report podcast. I'll keep it to the short version here, I promise, because we have lots of stuff to talk about on the official podcast of the Tech Report. I started doing the OCF podcast for a forum that some people who are listening might be familiar with, the Overclockers forum, because I was this geeky young kid building my computers, and I loved the idea of radio content. And I remember I was like sitting in bed at like 1 a.m, and I had this idea to do a podcast for this forum that I was a member of. And it's kind of like the TR forum. A lot of people giving each other tips and advice on building computers and overclocking them and cooling them and all these things. And so I just had this idea of like, oh, I should do a podcast for the Overclockers forum. And so I just grabbed a microphone, and I grabbed at the time, which was like it was the cheapest Dell laptop you could buy. It was like a Celeron processor and like it was bad. I mean, it was very nice. It was my first laptop and I was really excited about it, but it just had no processing ability whatsoever. And I started cobbling together this podcast and started cranking away on that. And I was doing that off and on for a couple of years before I invited you, Scott, onto the OCF podcast as a guest commentator to discuss the only graphics card that I can honestly still name. Every one of them else has just, I couldn't tell you. I'm so lost, it's not even funny. I'm not even sure if, like, AMD is still a company. I guess you guys will be talking about that later. Like, I'm very lost at this point. It has all passed me by. But at the time, it was the NVIDIA 8800 GT. Yeah. And it was like the first in a while of cards that was exciting everybody. And it was budget friendly, and it was powerful, and it was exciting. And you had written an article about it. And I'd love to tell you, Scott, that I had scoured the web as a producer looking for the best analyst that I could find who was really going to discuss the nuances of the 8800 GT on my little podcast in a way that was really going to bring quality to my audience. The truth is, you're the first article that I happened to come up with, and I just emailed you out of the blue. So I just said, "Would you want to come on my show?" And you said yes, and I think I had you on twice, and you also came on as like a CES recap, I think, once.
Yeah.
And then there was this, you know, it's always because when Scott does this thing, like Scott's done this for the past 8 years, I'll get a message from him like, "Hey, can we talk later?" And it's always like, it's like getting that from your girlfriend. "We need to talk later." You're always just like, "Uh-oh." So I got that from Scott. He's like, "Hey, we need to talk later," and I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, how would you like to come do this podcasting thing for us? And that began the conversation on the Tech Report podcast. And it was Cyril Kowalski reporting live from France. Well, live is a strong word. I think he wasn't really tuned in, but it was Jeff Gager in Canada, Scott Wasson in Kansas City, Missouri, and Jordan Drake in the mountains of Boone, North Carolina, trying to wrangle together this team of folks and pronouncing Cyril's name Cyril, and many. In fact, I think, what are we looking at here in the screen? Is this the?
This is episode 1 here.
Yeah. So I guess we were talking about the 8800 GT then as well. I guess the timing would have been pretty concurrent. So this is February 9th, 2008, which, you know, do the math, and that's a certain number of years that I can't do off the top of my head, but I think it's 8 plus. No, I guess that would have been, let's see, what?
7 plus.
7 plus. Okay, so we're not quite at 8 yet, but. And since then, you know, I've traveled the world with this podcast. I was sent as a correspondent to Beijing to cover the, overclocking event there. I've been over the West Coast. I've been to Vegas. The first and only time I've been to Vegas. I always love telling people, I went to Vegas for work. "Oh, great. When was that? Like a couple years ago?" "No, I was 17. You know, showed up, green and underage. A lot of parties I missed out on. And I did drink some beer, Scott. I will admit to you now that, you know, statute of limitations, I did consume alcohol at some of those parties illegally. So I don't know if we need to have a conversation with HR or what the situation is, but that's just, you know, as long as I'm getting things off my chest.
I didn't know anything about that. So
yeah, well, damn it, I should not have told you. That was a nice plausible deniability. And then, so this podcast has been it's been this bi-weekly part of my life now for 7+ years, following me from the trips and things I was doing when I was living in North Carolina, all the way over to moving to New York City. I remember being extraordinarily upset when I got my first real job, and you inviting me to come with you guys to CES. Mm-hmm. This is back in the day when we were still bringing the whole team. And I had to say no because I had this real corporate job in New York City. And I remember just being emotionally devastated because I thought, how am I ever going to be able to do these fun trips anymore and go places now that I have this real job that all of a sudden I have at age 20? And that began this whole new chapter of me having excuses for why the podcast would be delayed or starting late, or, you know, over the years, my production time has slowed down because inevitably there's some extracurricular that I'm working on or some work related project or some such thing. But the podcast has just been this constant in my life. And it's been something, quite honestly, guys, that I've enjoyed amongst some of the most enjoyable things that I do in the conversations I have with you, Scott, and in the banter. It's no secret that my favorite part of the show is always talking about the movie that I've recently seen, or the random rant I have about Apple or legal issues, because honestly, I can't tell you what the latest fastest processor is for Intel. My role has always been this sort of novice to help along for the listeners. And so yeah, it's been this incredible journey that I have this moment. And and now that I bring this full circle coming back to you, Scott, that I said, you know, and hold on, I just checked my notes here because I had a few. I'm just making sure I'm covering off on everything. Nah, this is spam from E-Trade. But anyway, so anyway, the point is, a couple months ago, I said to you, Scott, like, I think I need to move on and start a new chapter. I'm trying to do more things in the voiceover world. I'm trying to do some other projects, and I need to free up my sort of extracurricular world. And then also Nathan's coming along, and I'm thinking maybe Nathan can take over some of the production stuff. And, you know, we're moving to this video format. And let's be honest, I don't look good on camera. So, you know, that makes me feel uncomfortable. So I think that was the conversation I had with you, Scott. And then I said, you know, let's do it the long tail on this. I want to do a couple episodes, really ease things in. And at a certain point, Nathan took over the editing, and things have been going great, presumably. So no, so I think it's been a smooth transition, and clearly, as I mentioned earlier, no one has missed me. So all the beta testing suggests this is the tactical move that everyone is okay with us making, and that's where I'll shut up. And Scott, do you want to talk about how great I am, or what do you want to do next?
Well, yeah, I could. We don't. Well, how much time do we have, man? No, but I mean, come on. This is. I think the podcast has gotten better. I think we're learning to do video, and that's gotten better. We've had some great guests like David Cantor, and those have gotten good reviews. And you know, one of the keys for us in making this better is we need to do it every week. We need to do it. We need to have all the versions out as quickly as we can, and we need to be able to be flexible and react when news happens. And all of that stuff is great for me because this is my business. But for you, it's hard because it's not your job. But you know, just so everybody knows, I'm willing to give Jordan every type of flexibility that we could give him just to have him join us. But he's got male modeling to do, frankly.
That's not true.
And you know,
hold on a second. Hold on, my
way more fulfilling and lucrative.
No,
than the Tech Report podcast, and everybody knows it. So I think that's fine. But no.
That's.
But actually, Jordan, I hope maybe we can persuade you to come back on like the next time Apple does something big or something.
I would love to. You know, it's one of those things too where it's a very different relationship with the podcast when you can tune in on a Thursday night and sit in and hang out on the show, and then not have to spend Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday night and Tuesday night trying to cobble the episode together.
Yeah.
And the listeners are probably very aware, because I've talked about this in the past, those who've been listening for a long time, that, you know, I am really, really anal when it comes to how I edit the show and how I try and make everyone sound a certain way. And I mean, people don't realize I cut out ums and ahs, and I actually edit the shows so people interrupt each other less, because I'm really focused on, for the produced version of the show, I've always wanted to be a listening experience where you don't have to rewind to hear what people were saying because they were talking over each other. So I've always done things like that, and it's always been great. And I think a lot of that torch is being passed on to Nathan, and I think he's been doing a really great job. But it's one of those things where it's always a weekend for me. It's never just the ones Thursday night recording. So with that taken away, and I think I'd love to come back at certain junctures. I think, for instance, that, you know, when we're at some juncture talking about Infinity Wars or Captain America, Civil War, or some of the more high-flying geek films that we love to discuss, I'd love to pop back in. I think Jared Leto's Joker is going to need some discussion when that happens. That was Suicide Squad. So I think there's let's give me a second.
Uh-oh, here it is.
I think there's a moment for me to come back. Because I really do love this show. Yeah, so anyway, it should be a good time. And Jeff Campman is, you know, he's here to carry the match or torch or what?
I am but an ant in your shadow. but I will try.
Well, I did want to do something a little more officially, just as a final sort of farewell. And I should say before I get to anything else, there is something about putting yourself out there in the content world, journalistically, or in my case, I wouldn't really call what I do journalism. It's more of content creation, where you open yourself up for criticism. We talked about this for years, both off the show and, before we start recording some conversation we're having about a particularly vicious troll in the comments or something that's happening. And then also just, as people have been reviewing the show, I mean, we've gotten comments over the years, people saying, loved commentary from Jeff this episode. Jordan had some great points. All these things. We've also had people saying, Jordan, you really sucked. Or who's this guy this is early days. Who's this guy who's hosting the podcast? He's not funny. And I would thoroughly agree with that person. But what I have found is that there is something very instructive in life when you have an opportunity to put yourself out there and to get both negative and positive feedback, because it really teaches you that just comes with the job. So I think in other parts of my life, I've had the opportunity, because of our listeners, to benefit from input, which you don't normally get in real life. There's not a lot of people who are watching your work and giving you feedback, as well as criticism, because that teaches you something as well. So for the criticism, folks, I would say up yours. And then for the people who have been so helpful and friendly and sending their listener mail questions and started off a question with really love the show, love what you guys do. Thank you. I mean, really do. And the people who are now in the chat room, I was 54 people who are chit-chatting in the comments, and they moved on to other conversations. They're ready for this segment to be over. But to those guys, I would say, no, it's fine. They're talking about the barbecue, and I go for the bone-sucking sauce. That's my preferred, just as long as you guys are talking about that. But I would just say thanks, because it has really been cool to have what we've always had, which is this really cool little community. It's little in the big scheme of things, but quite substantial. I mean, we're tens of thousands of listeners, and to always have you guys listening in and tuning in, and providing your feedback, and sending your listener mail questions, and putting up with my humor, and also my delayed publication dates, and just generally being really cool, which isn't sort of consistent with the rest of our tech report community, but I think certainly something I've appreciated. So hats off to you guys. And then before I go officially, I just wanted to, I would give you these, Scott, but I have to listen to you talking. So because you're now the official host of the show, I think, right?
I don't freaking know.
No, I think, well, Scott, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know this, but Scott's going to be debuting a new microphone soon. He's really trying to, emulate the whole thing I've got going on here. So I just wanted I have another pair of production headphones here, and I'm going to need you, Scott, to just help me pantomime this a little bit here. So I'm just going to take the production headphones. I can't give you a microphone because I don't have that, and I'm just going to pass them. You see what I'm doing here?
This
is
so
the
you
motion.
pass, so I'm going
to pass them past the camera. So, and there we go. So I've passed. He puts them on ceremonially. Someone plays taps.
I'm sorry to have that queued up.
Nathan's going to include this later. Give it a second. Hand over your heart, right? But yeah, so you guys are in good hands with Scott. You always have been, of course, because Scott is really the reason you listen to the show in the first place. But yeah, so that's it. That's the end of my journey. I feel like the end of Lord of the Rings. I don't know if I want to cry or go to the bathroom.
Well, next time Apple releases a belt buckle or whatever they're doing this fall, we'll call on you, man.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right.
Well, thanks for taking the time with us this evening, Jordan.
Yeah.
And, passing the torch. And
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for everything for so many years and making the show the highest quality production. People haven't realized what you've done, but they've appreciated it because we hear about that. And also, when things are less than perfect, we've heard about that too. And we're still going to have some work to do just to keep the standards that you've established up. But we're working on it. And, we will consult with you as needed on that front too.
Always available.
But thanks very much for all of it and for being, very willing, very entrepreneurial with us. We can't pay a ton for everything, and you've stuck with us, and we've seen this thing grow and really appreciate it. So thanks for.
Well, I won't say goodbye. I'll say until next time. For me, folks, I'll get my audio uploaded for you, Nathan, and I'll see you guys around.
All right. Take care,
Jordan.
Jordan.
Take care, man. Thanks.
Later.
All right.
Now I've got to add... Jeff, you're gone from the screen. You're gone.
Yeah, I know.
Because our little streaming software is awful. So we're going to... People will see a little animation in the stream as your head moves around. But we'll get it sorted here, and we'll bring you back in. Okay. Oh, and it's changed again on me. I've got to do it. Look at that. You've got an enormous noggin right there. Oh, no!
It's more enormous than usual.
Dude, this is all messed up. This is going to be... Look at that. Jordan leaves, and it just all falls apart. Let's get your enormous noggin into a normal-sized space. And then I have to add back the media file because it disappeared on me. Because XSplit is a terrible piece of software that is indispensable nonetheless. It's frustrating. Okay. So I think we have a ton of other stuff to talk about. And how long are we into the show? 20 minutes? So we are going to have to make up some time once I get your head inserted in the show again.
Yeah.
So the next thing to talk about, and I can talk about this while I'm doing this, is the TR Barbecue.
Right.
Which is coming...
The 12th year that this has happened?
Yeah. TR Barbecue 12, which is a shocking number. I haven't been going for 12 years, but it's been happening for 12 years. And I just booked my flight this morning to make it happen again.
You're going to extreme measures to make this one. For reasons we can't talk about. But
okay. Sure we can.
I don't know.
IDF is happening the week after the weekend of the barbecue.
Intel Developer Forum, right?
Yeah, Intel Developer Forum. Normally that's in September, but they have moved it this year to August. And anyway, there are reasons around maybe new chips from Intel. I don't know, but they're doing it in August. So my plan normally would be to drive up there from Kansas City to Holland, Michigan, through the Chicago area and on around the lake. But instead, I'm going to fly to Grand Rapids, rent a car, stay in a hotel, go to the barbecue, then fly directly from Grand Rapids into San Francisco for IDF. So it's just a different plan, and it's fine. That's the way we're doing it. But the barbecue is a ton of things. Jeff, you haven't been. But
I have not, but I will be there this year.
Oh, so look at that. We got a second. So we got two staff members. Adam, who normally goes, who's our biz guy, is not going this year because I'm not driving up, and it's tough for him to do it. And so we'll have two. So excellent. So it'll be good to see you. I've never met you in person, so
no,
that's kind of freaky. But there you go.
Well, internet, man.
Yeah, the internet. It's a weird. People get together. Anyway, the barbecue is kind of all day. It starts noonish. I don't know. There's a thread in the forums, but we have amazing barbecued ribs, and then people play like lawn games, cornhole. They throw the bean bags. There's a little tournament. We have a swap meet where people bring hardware and just sort of trade stuff, older stuff, whatever they don't want. And then we do, mostly it's just good conversation. We have some guys who bring home brews and microbrews beers, and they trade them back and forth, test them, and, converse over what they like. We have, it's lakeside cabin, so you can go down to the beach and get into really cold water, usually. And depending on the lake levels, you could be on the beach or not, but I think that the levels are lower this year, and so
I think they're higher, right?
I don't know.
From what I looked at, there may not be a beach this year.
Oh, okay, they may not. I don't know, but usually then what we do is into the evening we do fireworks, and that has turned into like people are putting some real money in, and the people involved are Tech Report readers, so you can imagine that the fireworks show has been engineered to be quite the thing, and so that's been good. And then we do like sort of a beachside roast marshmallows and hot dogs and stuff, campfire in the evening for those who choose to stay. And so it's kind of a full day of hanging out and just talking tech with people, talking whatever with people. And it's just a great group of folks who have been coming for quite a while. And every year there's sort of a new blood, people who come in who haven't been before, like you this year, I guess, Jeff. And so it's always kind of fun to see those folks and watch them, interact with everybody else. So
this is also where we drag up all the hardware that's on our shelves that we don't need anymore, and
it has
give
been
away, right?
And also some new stuff. And this year it's tougher because I'm flying.
Yeah, you're flying, right?
And so I don't know. I haven't worked out exactly what I'm going to do, but I think it's going to mean like I'm going to bring something really nice as like a grand prize for the cornhole tournament or something. And that may be it, but I think it'd be like the nicest thing I've brought. So if I bring what I don't want to give anything away, but if I bring what I think I'm going to bring. So anyway, there's a thread in the forums. It's the TR Barbecue thread. There's also a post on the front page right now. You can check it out. If you can't find information, then shoot me an email, hit us up on Twitter, whatever. We'll have more posts about it on this site. But it's in Holland, Michigan, August 15th, Saturday, and this is very much a family-friendly event. Just bring whoever you want, and it'll be good. So it's a lot of fun. We have quite a few folks who come out. And, the best thing is just get into the thread if you're going to come. Post in the thread and say you're coming. You'll probably get an assignment for, like, kind of potluck for food, what to bring. And, there's not much else to it. Bring a few bucks to give for the fireworks, and you're good to go. So,
all right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So
that'll be good. That'll be fun. So I don't think Nathan's going to make it this year either. My son, who was there the last couple of years because of the whole travel thing and all that, and it's later this year. Well, anyway, he's starting school like the Monday after that. So anyway, but it should be good. So,
all right. Next up.
Yeah, let's talk about the AMD news that just came out.
This financials.
Right. Hot off we don't use presses anymore.
Hot over the wire or something. I don't know.
So, this is I guess the context for this is everybody's in the PC industry is kind of reporting their results for the latest quarter. We've seen analyst reports sort of predict this, and now we're seeing the results that PC sales have been down. Q2 is traditionally the worst quarter for PC sales, but AMD actually they issued a warning, didn't they, a few weeks ago about this particular quarter's revenue being lower than the expectations they had set. And then here we are, and they reported a loss of $181 million, which is worse than what I'd lost in my pocket in any given time by a lot. And most of it, I guess, is basically PC sales were down. They didn't sell as many CPUs, APUs to big PC makers, and they took a $33 million charge. We already knew about this was going to happen for transitioning some products to a FinFET process from the 20 nanometer one, presumably at TSMC. What else is news about this? Let's see. Other than, it stinks for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously bad news, but, they say the graphics segment's average selling price has been steadily increasing. I guess that's they're selling more high-end cards. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, you want your average selling prices to go up. You don't want them to go up because you're not selling any low-end cards because it's all Intel integrated graphics is eating them. So I'm not really sure about the dynamic. One would hope that the launch of the Radeon Fury and the 300 series would help with the average selling prices if they have, more compelling products at the high end that people will, be buying those, and that will help with their product mix. It's really better for a company like AMD to sell more expensive cards because they have more margin in them than to sell the low-end ones where there's just not much money to be made usually on a cheap graphics card. So, so that happened, and then they said, I think, Jeff, this is all new. We haven't written this up. I believe they said that they taped out 2 parts on a FinFET process during.
And that was during the earnings call, and I was not in on that, unfortunately. But do we know what those are? Any hint of what those are?
No, and okay, that's an interesting question. We don't even know what foundry they're at. So it could be a FinFET part that is a GPU, which would be really nice. If they got a new GPU, presumably something with HBM, maybe something a little more mid-rangey, but a really nice thing, I think they could probably, with a smaller chip on a FinFET process, get really close to Fury performance. With some, but I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. The other thing is that it could be an APU, or like the best thing ever would be they surprise everybody and have Zen. Which is the new CPU microarchitecture. They could have an APU based on that. But honestly, they have really been playing cards close to the vest. I don't even know rumors about what those chips are. I don't really trade in rumors that much, but yeah, I don't know what it is. So that I think we're looking at another quarter or so, and we should maybe see chips. It could take longer than that, depending. Taping out a chip and having it ready to go are different things, and there's a question: how many revisions do you have to do before it's right? What is the health of it? And when it's a new process like this FinFET process is, there can be manufacturing side things you have to work out. So we'll see. We know that Intel's coming soon with Skylake, and that means AMD falls further behind, and they need this. They need new CPU parts, in order to try to stay competitive in more of the market.
Getting yelled at in the chat. People say tape out does not mean it's ready to launch or coming soon.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be a while.
That's what we said, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, they're saying tape out a year later if everything goes right. Yeah. I mean, that could be Zen. So
that could be Zen.
Yeah. So we'll see. The other thing that happened was Intel. They announced earnings. They were down too. I don't want to talk a ton about them other than just Intel. They still made money. The PC portion of their business was not as good, but the data center stuff kind of saved them. But the big news here was their TikTok is getting another TikTok to do. They're getting another thing during that process. They're not going to be getting as many products, they're not going to be getting his process tech out as quickly, and so they're going to actually do 3 product iterations on a single process technology. And
that's the 14 nanometer node.
Right. So
the current one is 14 nanometers.
Currently, Broadwell is shipping on 14 nanometers. Skylake is coming soon on 14 nanometers. Nanometers may be shipping, and we expected that they were doing their 10 nanometer process would be out for the follow-on, but instead it now looks like that they're going to delay the 10 nanometer process and do another. They say half sequence thing that is basically it's going to be like an architectural or design improvement. It's going to have a little more oomph in terms of performance, but it'll stay on the 14 nanometer process, and then they go to 10. And what is the name of this thing? It's just Lake?
Well, it's had different. The source we cited says it's just called Lake. Some rumors and reports that have sort of floated around have said this thing is called KB Lake. So who knows? But
and so it makes sense, I guess. I think Intel's very aggressively pursuing, especially the mobile stuff, like the Broadwell chips that they've got into the really teeny laptops, things like that, and continuing to push on that at a really high rate is probably what they're going to try and do. And if the process tech is not going to be ready, then I think looks like they move ahead with another product gen. So hopefully at IDF we'll get more detail about what exactly their plans look like. This is a bit of a surprise, I'll say, though, because last time, several times, I've seen them talk about 10 nanometers, and around the Broadwell launch, some of their top guys were there discussing 10 nanometers, and they were very confident at that time that they were going to hit. And this is something that people are watching because this whole Moore's Law thing, and everybody else is slowing down, and the economics of this Moore's law is not just about like, okay, every couple of years we get more transistors in the chip. It's also supposed to like drive costs down.
Yeah,
and
the costs
are not going down.
Right.
There's more multi-patterning and things like that they have to do, where they make multiple masks and offset them in order to get to smaller process geometries successfully at certain layers, the small layers. And so Moore's law has been slowing down, and Intel has still been well ahead of everybody else, and they haven't shown as many signs of struggle as the rest of the world, and now we're seeing some. And I don't know, did you see the banter in the comments, Jeff, about there's a guy who thinks that Samsung's going to overtake them now?
I did not.
So that was interesting, just because like nobody has thought that anybody was going to overtake Intel for a long time.
Yeah.
And Samsung has been doing well. Like they made it to 14 and FinFETs before anybody else other than Intel. Intel was there first by a fair amount, but and they seem to have all the money, and so they can invest it. And so, you know, it could work out. I don't know that somebody else catches up, but that seems unlikely.
Well, I don't think it was in the show notes, but maybe we should mention this because IBM just like produced a test chip on a 7-nanometer process, I think it was.
Yeah.
But that's not, I don't think, anywhere as near as close to production.
Not at all. It's a test chip, and test chips don't tell you about the economics of it or any of that.
I was reading, you know, like the laser technology they have to use, like the optics and stuff is completely different, and it's crazy. Like, it goes from a refractive to a reflective system or something. It's intensely more expensive, so that's probably a long way off yet. But.
Yeah, but the relationship there is interesting because IBM has been part of the Common Platform Alliance along with Global Foundries and Samsung and some of these other firms too, but they kind of the other firms in the alliance keep getting absorbed into mainly Global Foundries. In fact, IBM's
that's
chip
what just
division
happened, right?
Just got absorbed by Global Foundries. But Global Foundries has licensed Samsung's 14-nanometer process because they've had trouble getting there, and because I think they want to have cross-compatibility so they could get some business from Samsung customers making chips similarly in their own factories. And so there's a relationship there. So the 7-nanometer test chip is interesting because that means the Common Platform Alliance research guys are on that case. But of course they would have to be in order to continue developing this for the future. And the test chip is a milestone, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not a shipping product.
Not even close. Yeah. So anyway, everything is tough right now, I think, on the chip manufacturing front, and seeing Intel do this is kind of a unique milestone because they've never really admitted to slowing down to this extent before, and making it sound like this is the new normal going forward. Changing the expectations, not just for 10, but future process nodes. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, we've got, like they say, 2017, I think. Second half 2017 is the new 10-nanometer point. You know, so we have a while to wait.
Right. So. And we'll have to see where everybody else is by then, but I can't imagine. It's hard to imagine that they won't be like similarly struggling or further behind. But okay, let's move on though, because the happy things.
Yeah, good things.
Windows 10 has what is this? This is a new build. They basically got rid of all the dev builds, right? All the
so anybody who's used a preview Microsoft OS is familiar with like this little watermark in the lower right hand corner of the desktop that says, you know, build evaluation copy, build whatever. And so, you know, Microsoft has been doing this preview program with Windows 10 and open beta for quite a while now, and you know, the operating system is coming out on July 29th, and so this latest build, this 10.240 build, no longer has the watermark, and there are rumors saying, this may be the release to manufacturing build. So this may be, more or less what we see start rolling out on July 29th.
Well, it's close, right?
Right. Yeah, it's really close.
Yeah. So we may be there, and I guess I got to get my hands on some Windows 10. And
yeah,
I haven't messed. Have you messed with the preview?
I have. I did download it. I did put it in a VM, but it's picky about if you have tried to sign in with the same Microsoft account onto the same machine, it still thinks Windows 10 still thought it was the same machine despite not being. So I couldn't get updates, and I was like, you know what, I don't have time for this.
Right.
Sad to admit, but
yeah. I mean, it's weird being like, sorry, you're a techie guy, you should be playing with Windows 10, but I've been so busy with new hardware that playing with the new OS has not been a thing that I've been able to do. So
I probably need to get out a drive, or bare flash drive while I still can, or SSD, and put it on it just so we can start getting an idea of what's going to happen. But
yeah, so this is, I don't know. It's hard for me to get excited about the Windows 10 feature set. I see the pictures and the start menu thingy and whatever.
The start menu is back.
It's back. I don't know if I care. I think that some of the, I hope that when I put in a USB flash drive, that it won't continue to come up on my 30-inch desktop display and say tap here to choose your action. That's rage-inducing for somebody using the pinnacle of computers as we have them. And Microsoft has chosen to, the small percentage of touch-enabled devices that they have. That's what they're going to feature. I hope that they focus, and in even bigger ways, focus on the desktop. I've heard good things, but the other big thing is DirectX 12, and that's exciting. But when do the games come out? We don't know yet. I've heard things like soon. What does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think most of us, we had a poll about this. Most people are, or not most people, a fair number of people are considering upgrading right away because it's cost free, basically.
It's about even. We got about 4,000 votes, and 38% said we'll upgrade on day one. 39% said we're going to wait until the kinks get worked out, and then 14% say they're not going to install it at all.
Right.
So
that's weird.
Don't know about
okay.
that.
But that's a good. Actually, that's a good number for Microsoft to have the top two.
Yeah.
Almost 80% saying they're going to upgrade either soon or not long after, as long as they get the kinks worked out.
Microsoft has set an ambitious goal for itself. They want 1 billion installs of this operating system. So, that's it. That is good news for them.
Yeah. So, and given the financial news that we've seen from the PC guys, the PC chip guys, I think everybody's hoping that Windows 10 brings good things for the.
Right.
Yeah.
And who knows whether it'll lead to increased hardware sales, because it's probably not any more hardware intensive, but I don't know.
Well, the thing is that it doesn't have to be more hardware intensive to sell more PCs. It needs to be a good experience that someone wants, right? Because a lot of people are going to go and buy a PC based on, that's new, that's better than what I have, and whatever, because they don't want to go through the upgrade process, or the PC's 4 or 5 years old. There are a lot of old PCs sitting around. People should be upgrading, but they're not, because in part Microsoft hasn't given them, and the PC makers haven't together given them sufficient reasons to upgrade. And the hope is that Windows 10 helps,
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
We certainly hope so.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a ton of stuff to discuss. Let's see. We have
this GTX 980 Ti.
Yeah. Let's look at it real quick. So this is. I'm looking at a bunch of 980 Tis, but this is a special one.
Right. So apparently there's this famous overclocker whose handle is Kingpin. His actual name is Vince Lucido, and he's partnered with EVGA several times to produce sort of special graphics cards bearing his name that are designed for extreme overclockers. And this may be the most extreme one yet. So they took a 980 Ti. They basically put a solid copper heat sink on it, solid copper heat sink, heat pipes, all this crazy stuff, and then designed it primarily to be overclocked with liquid nitrogen cooling. So it's got all these other like plates and reinforcements on it so that it can, I guess, stand up to being put under a cryopot. The power phase is beefed up a whole bunch to handle more voltage. So, I mean, it's for the most extreme of the extreme. Sorry, had a
You
cat.
all right?
Yeah,
Oh, had a cat.
cat.
Okay, cat issue. Yes, it looks pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't really care what it does. You just look at all that copper, and it's like, okay.
Well,
That's my response.
what's the price?
Don't know yet.
Yeah,
But
not cheap.
it will not be cheap. So I don't know. It's cool. I like it when hardware manufacturers push to the extremes like this. So
Yeah, I guess that this probably then goes on to set records. I guess that's the goal,
Yeah.
right, with these folks, because you cool it down. You got one of the fastest, probably the fastest GPU basically that you've got right now. I mean, I think pretty clearly, and yeah, good things happen. So, although I'm kind of curious if you water cooled a Radeon Fury with the HBM memory subsystem, would that be? I don't know. Maybe that would be faster. So that's like one of these cases where I want to do some extreme overclocking now. 'Cause, well, I mean, it's not very often that you have like, we got all the memory bandwidth you need, so you just overclock your GPU to whatever. And right now, the Radeons do have. So, yeah.
Well, order a doer of liquid nitrogen, and that can be our next testing regimen.
Dude, I have been around those overclocking contests and stuff, and I am terrified of that stuff. Like I've had like people like, that leaked out on your shoe. I'm sorry, it'll be okay. Don't worry. And I'm like, well, I'm glad it wasn't exposed flesh. What? I mean, it's terrifying.
And then part of your shoe shatters.
Yeah, I mean, and they just play around with it all the time. I'm sure they're used to it, but I mean, serious burns are possible with that stuff, and so you have to respect it. It scares me. So I don't know. Let's talk about real quick. The current situation.
Yeah.
I did a post
what
a while
is
ago.
going on in your testing facilities right now?
So I think this addresses some reader questions too. What is going on is that people were asking these questions all through the past couple months about like, hey, that product launch, why didn't you have a review of it? Well, what happened there? Carrizo came out or whatever, and there were a lot of products that were launched from like June through early July that the hardware to review it kind of came a little later. And we have a bunch of it here in Damage Labs. I have a bunch of it. And it's all kind of my stuff. Like I cover CPUs and graphics cards and sometimes displays. And that's the stuff that has launched. And like all of a sudden now I've got a desktop Broadwell chip. I've had Radeon Furies coming through. I've got some G-Sync and FreeSync displays. I had the Radeon R9 300 series that came out, and I didn't have cards right away, and now I do. And so the answer basically is I'm working my way through them. So one thing I'm doing right now is looking at this EVGA card or this MSI. These are GTX 980 Tis. In fact, I'll give you a little hint here. So this pictured on the screen here is a MSI card that I say is a GTX 980 Ti. That I'm pretty sure is a GTX 970 that I took pictures of, thinking it was a 980 because it was sitting next to it on the table when I went to take pictures. And so I think this is actually a misrepresentation. They have a very similar looking.
The stickers look different than the 970s, but
I don't know. You have to go look at it again. But anyway, don't take pictures of the wrong card, or don't really benchmark the wrong card. Heck, man, that's crazy. But I'm looking at 980 Tis and rounding those up. I got desktop Broadwell. I've got a ton of stuff. I got these monitors. they're all here. I'm working my way through them. So we saw last week the Radeon R9 Fury came out, and we had the R9 300 series cards tested along with that, and we had a huge number of results. I think we're about to talk about that review. And I have a plan, and I am stepping through this. The thing is, there's more new stuff coming. So it's a great time. We have had, in years past, last few years past, quiet periods where not much was happening in PC hardware. And although this is like my personality and my intentions, this is stressful. It's great that there's a lot happening. So I'm working on it, guys. There's a lot of stuff, and it will all be coming. So, Jeff, I think that probably the next thing to do is to maybe do some reader questions, or we can talk about the Fury review and then do reader questions, because a lot of those are about that. Yeah,
let's cover that first, because there are a lot of questions about the Fury.
Okay, but I failed on this front, so we're gonna attempt to do this, even though I failed you. We do have a sponsor for this episode,
right?
And so it's EVGA, and they've got something they want to feature, and I'm going to attempt to bring this up on screen, although I am I'm failing at that too. This is supposed to be an image of their ACX 2.0 card, which the GTX 971 actually. Here, let's put this EVGA card up. Hey, there you go. But they do have something that Jordan would normally read the copy here. I'm going to attempt to read this. We'll see how it goes. All right.
Sure.
So this. I'm not doing this again. Like we're gonna hire someone to come in and do this, I think. But so EVGA says the new generation of EVGA GeForce GTX 970s have arrived with the SSC and FTW+. These enhanced models offer improved cooling, double BIOS support, new display output configuration, and 6 power phases for robust overclocking support. The FTW+ model even has an included backplate. These new cards also feature EVGA ACX 2.0 cooling that features optimized swept fan blades, double ball bearings, and an extreme low power motor. The ACX 2.0 cooler offers more airflow, with less power, unlocking additional power for the GPU. And so I am using an ACX 2.0 cooler. I've been testing on the 980 card. I can vouch that it's a good cooler. It's quiet and effective. It would be, I don't know if it's the exact same cooler on the 970s, but it would be really quite effective on that card that really has a lot less power that needs to be removed for it. So thanks to EVGA for sponsoring the episode and for supporting the site. And unfortunately now we're going to talk about Radeons, but but thanks guys for supporting the community and being there for us. And next time we will have a better sounding voice read that copy. So we do what we can. But I guess, shall we jump into?
Yeah, let's take a look at the Fury.
All right. So
let's maybe just start with like a rundown of what the Fury is for those who aren't familiar.
For those who aren't familiar, so we talked about on the podcast the Fury X, the Radeon Fury X. It's a water-cooled, brand new high-end GPU from AMD that costs $650. Reviewed it, talked about it. We did several things on it. It's based on this new GPU called EVGA. It's an extension of the graphics Core Next architecture that AMD has had for many years, but it also adds high bandwidth memory, or HBM, to give you more memory bandwidth by far than any other graphics card. The Fury non-X version has just come out, and this is a $550 base product that is not water-cooled. It's based on the same GPU with portions cut down and the same high bandwidth memory with the same insane, like 512 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth as the higher end card. So the GPU is a little bit slower and a little bit narrower. Some of the resources have been deactivated, but not many. The memory bandwidth is the same, and there are other portions of the GPU, like the render backends or ROPs, that determine things like multi-sampled anti-aliasing, blending power, that are very important for performance, that have not changed. And so, this is clearly the higher volume product than the Fury X, and it's not the flagship, but it's the one that probably more people will buy. And this also is the one that, like, the Fury X is very much a specific thing. It's water cooled. The card looks a certain way. Nobody gets to change it. The Fury, board makers can choose to customize, put on their own coolers, make modifications to the design as they see fit. And so there's just more leeway. And so there's more variety amongst the cards.
And so we got this Asus one, right?
The Asus Strix arrived in Damage Labs less than 24 hours before the product launch. It got here at like 1 p.m. on Thursday, and at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. on Friday, the product launched by Central Time Zone. So that was a stressful period of my life. I would like to have those years that I lost off of it back at some point, but I know that can't really be arranged. But we got a review out pretty quickly on it, not immediately at 7 a.m., but pretty quickly on Friday. Yeah. The Strix card is a great representative of the Fury. In fact, there are only two that I know of that are now shipping and available.
Right.
Sapphire has a card, and Asus has a card. We were working with both of them to try to get a review unit, and everybody else basically said, not shipping review units, and we'll see about the final products. So I get the sense that maybe this thing wasn't completely ready in the volumes that everybody wanted.
Yeah, they're really hard to get.
Yeah, so they're selling.
Fury X's, so
they're selling out, and so the question is how much of that is like super high demand, and how much of that is low supply. And rumors are that there's some supply issues, and there's kind of an indication in the sense that you only have two brands doing it, and it was really hard to get review hardware. So hopefully that ramps up over time. Fairly quickly, hopefully, and these things become something that is easy to purchase instead of you have to kind of hunt for. But right now, you got to hunt. So
it's just Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So it's a little cut down. So does that have like a major effect? Did that have a major effect on it in our performance testing? How did it do?
Okay, well, let's talk about so the cooler and stuff. I don't think there's much more to say other than just this is a super beefy air cooler instead of water, but you'll see in the review it doesn't lose much as a result of that in terms of keeping cool or really even staying quiet. We also tested, and I pulled these up here, a Radeon R9 390X from Asus that has this is their Direct CU3 cooler that is super huge and beefy and triple fan and giant thick heat pipe pipes coming out of it. So this is a new thing, and it's actually the 390X is basically a R9 290X that is clocked even higher and has 8 gigs of memory, and it's higher power consumption than the Fiji-based stuff. Right. And so this cooler is capable of taking care of it. And then we also got from XFX a R9 390X that is a like the 290X,
right?
But it's not 390X, 390. It's like the 290X, but 8 gigs of RAM again, and a nice cooler. That's a great looking card. So we have a ton of game results, and we tested, every frame generated by the cards, and we reported frame times as well as average FPS and our frame time based metrics, where you can kind of get a better sense of how things work and how really the animation is happening, because as you can see, these lines for frame time generation are not smooth. These are actually from GTA 5 that I'm pulling up here are pretty nice. They did a great job with this game. The frame times don't vary a ton. There aren't a lot of spikes. Other games, there can be more of them. But we did all that, and let's take you to the final thing. So we'll pull up our scatter plots here, and in terms of average FPS, which is kind of a measure of potential, not delivered performance. Everybody does it, but it's not the best way to measure in-game performance. But the R9 Fury, according to this is our latest chart, is slightly faster than the GeForce GTX 980, but substantially slower than the Fury X and even more so than the 980 Ti. That on price, it costs more than a 980. The Asus card that we tested was $569, I believe, and the GTX 980 we tested was not stock clocked, so it costs more than the standard $499. But even so, there's somewhere around a $50 gap between the two, and there's a slight performance increase in terms of FPS to jump from the 980 to the Fury. I think a lot of AMD fans wanted to see more out of a card this expensive, but that's what you get. And then you switch over to our 99th percentile FPS per dollar, which is based on frame times, even though it says FPS, because it's really calculated based on all frame times, not just an average, moving average 1 second time. So anyway, this is the best metric for smoothness in terms of overall smoothness in a game. This doesn't look at like those outliers when things are really bad, but general performance. That's where things get dicey, and we kind of knew this was going to happen because we saw it with the Fury as well. When you're playing some games, the Radeons have some slowdowns. You can feel it as you play. All my testing is testing real games. I'm not running scripts. I'm playing games on video cards and seeing how they are, and my notes, go along with these results and say the same thing, which is, you could tell that in certain cases there were slowdowns on the Radeon and it wasn't as smooth. So what that means is the R9 Fury is not as smooth playing games as the GeForce GTX 980. Neither is the Fury X. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I really think this is something that AMD can fix in software. I don't think this is etched into the silicon of the Fiji GPU or other Radeons, but it is a problem. And there's new horizons for this with Windows 10 coming, DirectX 12, Vulkan, which is the new OpenGL. The way that these things work is changing. And there are some good things happening in terms of programming interfaces and things like that to get rid of the type of overhead that I think often causes these slowdowns. And so it's possible that we could be living in a world some years, 2 years from now, I don't know, maybe less, where AMD is able to compete more closely with NVIDIA on animation smoothness because things have gotten better thanks to DirectX 12, Windows 10, Vulkan, etc.
Right.
So that's the overall, and I guess the other thing to say about it, because we really, this is an important aspect of it, is power consumption on the R9 Fury is under load similar to what you see from a GM200 base card, like the GeForce GTX 980 Ti. It's higher than the GTX 980 by a fair amount, but was about 50 watts there, 48 watts?
Yeah, 50, something like that.
And that's full system power consumption under load right there. But same system, different graphics cards. So this is not as power efficient as the current NVIDIA stuff. The thing is, it's substantially more power efficient than, look at that R9 390X, 449 watts versus 330. This is running Crysis. This is Crysis 3. This is just in a game. It's not a peak number. And so, yeah, to get to the performance levels that they did with the 300 series, which, by the way, is faster than the 200 series by a bit, thanks to predictable like clock speed gains and things like that. But the way they did that was, turning up the voltage to get more clock speed, and clearly, the power consumption has gone up there. And this is in particular in reference to the Asus 390X. It's possible that other ones may not be quite as high power consumption. It depends on what the card maker is willing to tolerate in terms of what they think they can cool. The good thing I'll say for the 390X in that regard is that the Asus cooler was able to keep it actually quieter than a GeForce GTX 980 reference cooler was. So Asus has done its work there. And
that's really impressive.
It is. And this is on an open test bench. It will put that heat into your PC. And so over time that can feed back into more noise if your case has to cool itself more. But these coolers they're big, they're tall, they stick up 2+ inches over the top of the PCI Express expansion slot cover height, peak.
Yeah.
They're big, but they are very effective. So yeah, that is the thing. And if you look at the numbers here, the noise levels under load for the R9 Fury that is air cooled are actually only a couple decibels higher than the Fury X, which is water cooled. And again, the R9 Fury at 39, or no, what is it? I'm looking at the wrong thing. the Fury, no, that's right, 39. Oh, dude, look at that noise levels watts. I've got the wrong label in that graph. I gotta go fix that.
Whoops.
How did that? I know how that happened. I was reformatting. Friggin' Excel, man. Okay. Anyway, I have to fix that, but it's supposed to be dBA, not watts. Believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're able to with that beefy cooler get really close, within a couple decibels, 39 to 37 decibels, to the water cooler. So the water cooler is nice. It is not necessary for Fiji to get cooled, to be power efficient, to be quiet, and Asus has proven that with the Strix card. So that's good news. So I think that's a recap of our R9 Fury review. I don't know, I maybe missed some important things, but maybe we should transition into reader questions, because some of those are related, and see what we've got.
Let me take a look here real quick. I think that we only have one related to the Fury X. Do we just want to talk about our follow-up, or do we want to just...
well, let's do the question, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, okay, so this is about the Fury X, but we can talk about it here. So Mr. Bill asks, I noticed in the R9 Fury X review that in game after game, the Radeon R9 295X2 had lower latencies than either the Radeon 290X or the R9 Fury X. Do you anticipate that the rumored dual Fury X card will have a similar reduction in latencies? Now, is that true?
Well, that depends what you're talking about.
Okay.
If you look at our review, the R9 295X2 was a very good performer in terms of both FPS and frame times. And its power consumption is brutal. So let's pull up the power consumption so people can see. So understand the context here. 295X2 is dual Hawaii chip. It's like two 290Xs or 390Xs. 674 watts for the whole system under load. Brutal high power consumption. They use a water cooler on that, and it's still kind of noisy. So it performed well in our tests, the way we tested, generally speaking. The thing is that we were testing mostly for single GPU cards, so we were not using the tool FCAT that captures frame times at the display. We were using Fraps that captures frame times at the game. Now, FCAT is not necessarily more accurate than Fraps. People say that and they don't know what they're talking about. Both are accurate for what they measure, and in both cases, both points, either the sort of when the game hands the frame off to the API or when the frame hits the rendered frame hits the display, both points are important for animation smoothness. It's not just like, even if you get your frames out smoothly, if the contents of them aren't right because the game timing was off because of the feedback loop in between the API and when the GPU actually produces it is messed up, it's not going to be smooth animation. But generally speaking, for GPUs, we want to, when you're multi-GPU, we want to look at what's going on with the delivery of frames to the display with FCAT. We were not doing that here. So we didn't have the data I'd want to be conclusive about the R9 295X2 giving people a great experience. I will tell you that there are places in certain games where the 295X2 struggled, and I felt that when I was playing. And so the overall experience was not necessarily great, even though those numbers look really good. The other thing about it is this. I've used the word frame latency in the past to talk about frame times, and I've shied away from that recently. I actually use frame times instead. The reason is that latency implies lag, and there's a difference between your frame rendering time and the lag between when you press the mouse to like shoot somebody in an FPS and when you see on the screen that you shot. That response, input response loop is kind of weird in the case of multi-GPU with alternate frame rendering. You can get twice as many frames out, and you can do that relatively quickly, but your latency between input and response is not superior to a single GPU solution, because it doesn't work that way when you're alternating between two GPUs. As a result, the latencies on the 295X2 are not as good as the frame times might indicate, and we know this about AFR. We know this. This is why with DirectX 12 and Vulkan, multi-GPU is becoming something that doesn't use AFR, but probably will use split frame rendering or other types of sharing the load.
Right.
AFR is great for inflating benchmarks. It gives you high average FPS numbers, and it scales well in terms of geometry processing, not just shader processing. But it has a lot of downsides, and it tends to be a little bit of a mirage. There's a difference between what you are thinking you're getting in a benchmark and how good the experience is when you play. So the 295X2 is appearing in a single GPU review conducted for single GPUs because it's a significant product, but I'd be careful about those numbers. So, yeah.
Okay, and related to the review process, not necessarily the Fury, but no one but me asks, why do you not give the boost clocks that NVIDIA gets in reviews? And of course, if AMD does not hit their boost clock, which, after the 290 and 290X fiasco, they seem to be always hitting, please also tell us. It says, a note, I think having average boost for games tested in the review, focusing on that GPU is enough. That is what most seem to do. No need to do those numbers for all cards every review. So do we measure this? Or is there a way to measure this?
You can.
That makes sense? Okay.
I don't know that every other review does it. Honestly, I don't read every other review because I've got better things to do. I don't do well with other reviews. If they're good, then I'm like, oh my god, I got a competition. Ah! And if they stink, then I get really enraged. I get a big head about what we're doing. And so it's a bad dynamic. So I don't know what they do. What you see is what I would do as a gamer to test cards. Here's the deal with clocks. They're important in the sense that they define performance. There's a lot of dynamic behavior in GPU clocks now. It's the same way with CPUs, with SoCs, with all sorts of things. And the clock is not the clock anymore. The clock is a result of many inputs coming together into an algorithmic process that determines at this very moment what the clock speed should be, and then it will change up or down depending on other things: temperature, voltage needs, workload, voltage droop, all kinds of stuff. And I found that the best way to sort of do what gamers would do, or the best way to test, is to do what gamers would do: let the cards clock themselves as they would clock themselves, and then report the results to you. Spending a lot of time worrying about the clocks has not a lot of benefits unless there's something going wrong, right? Otherwise, I'm not super excited about them. There is an issue here that is something to think about, which is that there's some variability now from one GPU to the next in terms of absolute performance. A little bit better GPU that's named GeForce GTX 980 may perform better than another GPU that's not quite as good. That's true now also, I believe, of AMD GPUs as of Fiji. AMD's tuning algorithm and binning and sorting that they're doing, they have allowed for some variability. In the past, AMD has resisted that and said you should know that you're getting exactly what you're getting. We're talking about a few percentage points of variability, probably not very much, but from card to card they could change just a little bit. And so I think if you're very excited about whether like company A won or company B won in some contest, then the clocks become really important to you. If you're just looking for sort of how does this product perform as a consumer and you're wondering what to buy, I don't think that those last little nth degree things matter that much. So I would caution people not be too into worrying about clock speeds, because honestly it is extremely complex. It's supposed to be. And at the end of the day, what matters is the performance that you get.
Right.
Having said that, there is instrumentation that we could do in our reviews to report clock speeds. And typically, if you look at my reviews that usually come after the GPU initial review of individual cards, I'll actually report the clock speeds in those, like I did with the GTX 960. I tested 5 different GTX 960 cards. I showed you what their default clocks were when they were under heavy load, and then I showed you what I was able to achieve with overclocking. Because of all the inputs that come into determining the clock speed, overclocking is no longer, I turned the clock up 50 megahertz and it got 50 megahertz faster. It's actually way more complicated than that. So telling you what the clock was is important. However, I do worry a little bit about adding more work for us in like reporting clock speeds all the time by just like turning on a tool like GPU-Z to run in the background as we do our play testing of games, and then processing that and providing that data along with everything else. I also worry about data fatigue. We provide a ton of data about how each game performed.
How many times have we had to explain like frame times? I mean,
we're still working on it.
Yeah, we're still explaining it.
The other reviewers are now reporting frame times, and they don't understand what they're performing or what they're reporting, but why it matters. But they're doing it, and we still have some evangelization to do. Like, okay, here's what you do with the frame time distribution in order to make a qualitative judgment about which one played the game better. And by the way, tie that to what your butt in the chair noticed when you tested. We're trying, but that's a lot of work. The other thing is we had 18 hours to do this review.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe not adding stuff would be bad, but okay. There's another concern, and this is a bigger one, and that is there's a cost for instrumentation.
Right.
There's overhead, CPU overhead. When you run something in the background that's logging all the time, we are already logging every frame rendering time with Fraps. If we add another tool that runs constantly that adds more logging, then that could be a problem. And one of the guys who's asking this question, I think, is like a super big Radeon fan. And let me tell you, you do not want to see us add something to our reviews that creates more CPU overhead in the instrumentation, because clearly AMD's drivers cause them to be CPU limited more. Fraps I've used a lot, and it doesn't seem to be a problem in terms of overhead, but I would not want to combine it with another tool to log clock speeds all the time. And I don't think it's a huge issue. I'm willing to listen, though. Maybe more readers will chime in on this, and we'll see what's up. But be careful, guys. You always ask for more, and there's only so much we can do in every review. So that would be my answer there.
All right. So now do we do the follow-up about P-Cars? Do we want to talk about that, or
we can talk about it? This is sort of a thing that I did that supplemented our review of the R9 Fury X, which was after we published. Some folks decided that noticed that our numbers didn't seem to exactly comport with the numbers they saw other places, and one of the things that they identified as a potential problem is the fact that we tested with project cars, and that might have some kind of an input or impact on the overall index. So I went back and I looked at our numbers. Project Cars, by the way, is a great game. It's a game people are going to want to play. It is not an NVIDIA exclusive thing or even tied to them in marketing, I don't think. Maybe it is Maybe. Right. I don't know. I don't know the status. I don't care.
I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, who cares?
But
it doesn't matter.
It clearly runs better on. In fact, I could pull that up, I guess. But it clearly runs better on GeForces than on Radeons by a fair amount. And that was true in our R9 Fury X review, and it's also true in the Fury review, even though with an update to the game and an update to some drivers, I went and retested every card between those two reviews just to see if things got better for AMD. Mm-hmm. And one of the results that we had was basically just that AMD cards run this game pretty well, but comparatively speaking, they don't run it as well as the GeForces, to the extent that the slowest GeForce was faster than the R9 Fury X. And so that will, when you have scatter plots like we do that show the overall FPS, that will skew that a little bit. We use what's called a geometric mean to try to prevent outliers from getting weighted too heavily and causing that average to change too much. Mm-hmm. But in this case, after looking at, I thought I'd check this on the spreadsheet. I'm pretty sure I did. I thought it wasn't a big number. It isn't a big number that changed. But after looking again, I thought, hey, I can pull Project Cars out if that's a complete outlier, and see, show people what it looks like without that game in there. And so I've got the scatter plots up here. Before we pulled out Project Cars, the R9 Fury actually was a little bit slower in FPS averages than the GTX 980. Once we made that change, then the Fury was a little faster than the GTX 980. And
what was that? What was the absolute difference, though? Because this was like 2 frames per second, right?
Without cars, the overall average FPS for the Fury drops by 1.2 frames per second, and the score for the 980 drops by 2.8 frames per second. The net result shifts from a 0.6 FPS margin of victory for the 980 to a win for the Fury by a margin of 1.1 frames per second. Now, if you're really excited about that, you need to get another hobby. But some people, that was a big deal, and they didn't like it. And you know what? I figure, hey, we've had games in the past that skew our average and we've taken it out. I'm happy to try and do this here, show you what it looks like. And I updated the review because I decided after looking at it, this really, the Project Cars results don't track with any other game, and they're so much better on the GeForce. And so, okay, it doesn't really matter to me, because at the end of the day, the result that matters most is the 99th percentile one. And, you can change it too by taking out Project Cars. And what you'll find is the Radeons are still quite a bit slower than the GeForces. Everything that we had said in our analysis was true regardless of whether that game was included in terms of what mattered. I had to change very few words, 2 or 3 words in the conclusion of the article once I had changed these graphs. And, it's never the case that we're trying to make one side win or the other side win by the way we choose to test. We are trying to be fair. In this case, I thought it was a tweak that was actually, for fairness sake, something that we should go ahead and do, so we did it.
Sure.
It's not the case. I think you could set a bad precedent by every time someone says, that game is not right, it's a NVIDIA game, that you should change your setup. There's a problem here, and that is that Radeons oftentimes are fragile in terms of not running new games well because of driver support or developer relations or architectural weaknesses or whatever. And that happens too often. Frankly, if you're a Radeon owner, that's a bit of a liability on your side. And I think our numbers should usually reflect that. And I think our final numbers here, even with this tweak, do reflect that. So that's something that people need to think about. And if you care about Project Cars, those numbers are in our review. But I will caution to say what we found with Project Cars is that the Radeons at 2560 by 1440 at really high quality settings run that game quite well. Even though they don't put out the same numbers as the GeForces, they're not bad. And, that's at the end of the day, I think what matters when you go buy a graphics card is you want something to run your games well. And so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was our tweak. And if we have any other questions from the chat, I'm happy to take them.
Well, we have a small one, and we have a really, really big one.
Okay.
So, what do you want to do? Do we want to talk about the Define S, or do we want to address a big reader question, I guess,
is this the one about Big Little on x86?
Yes, Big Little X on x86.
Kevin asked that. Kevin, I love you, but no, not tonight. like the reason you don't do Big Little on x86 is because you don't need it for your partners to implement their DVFS stuff. Well, they just do it because it's Intel and AMD, and they know that stuff really, really well. So asymmetric multiprocessing could be a useful thing on x86. I don't think it would look like Big Little. I don't think we have the same reasons for existing.
All right, that's a concise answer.
I'm sure he might argue with me about that, but we should do that over beer sometime, Kevin. Not here. So.
Punk user asks, does anyone know the details of the protocol between the G-Sync module and the GPU, though? Do we know what this is in relation to?
I don't know. There's a G-Sync module from NVIDIA in a G-Sync capable display, and the GPU talks to it, and it is an extension of DisplayPort. It's a DisplayPort cable, and it's DisplayPort stuff. My sense is that it's not a huge change or extension, and that it doesn't have to be, because the module itself has logic that does some of the stuff in it that is just like, if I don't get a frame for this amount of time, go ahead and refresh again at the low end, that kind of thing. And it's got an FPGA that runs a lot of intelligence in the monitor itself. But the details of like what the DisplayPort link looks like and how different it is from a standard one, I couldn't tell you that.
And the follow-up is, does it use VSync interval killing like FreeSync? Do we know that?
Interval killing. I don't know. Sorry, dude. Sorry. We'd have to have some other conversations with those guys around this stuff.
Yeah. Selmore asks, when do you think there will be a new NVIDIA game bundle with GTX GPUs? Because those who got Batman, I guess Arkham Knight, essentially have a broken game right now.
Wow, I don't know. I think NVIDIA needs to think about his partnerships for that stuff, right? The other thing is, like, are they going to need it? Like, it's a sales tool to bundle a game. And I would think maybe they do that around Christmas time. But I have no information about their plans. But it is funny, like, that Arkham Knight thing has not worked out well for anybody involved on the PC side. No. And I'm kind of surprised NVIDIA's been kind of quiet there. I thought maybe they'd go ahead and like give people a little bit more extra goodie just to get them by. So, I don't know. Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, email NVIDIA, complain. That might be your best bet. So the last, is that the last thing on the reader questions? Someone asks, NTMBK says, did Intel get off their Keister and ship you an i7-5775C yet? So that's the Broadwell desktop chip.
Yeah, like I said, I got it.
Yeah, they got
now
it, right.
I'm on my Keister testing a lot of things, sliding around to this desk and that. I got it. It's on the agenda. I'm hoping to get it tested before I test like Skylake, but I don't know. So I'm doing a roundup in 980 ties. I got two really cool monitors, and I've got that, and all these things are like, I'm doing pieces of work on all of them, and eventually you'll see articles come out. But I'm not exactly sure when that one is going to come out. So I've got the new Godavari AMD APU as well to test, which is a little bit different segment, but also interesting on the CPU side for similar reasons. So we'll see.
Okay. And I guess on to the Define S.
Yeah, let's talk about this. This is your review of a Fractal Design Define, and this is a mid-tower ATX case?
Yeah, this is the Define S is an ATX mid-tower, just like every other ATX mid-tower in that sense. Where to begin?
Well,
So,
okay, this
yeah.
is. Let's talk about the Define R5 for a minute because you reviewed that not long ago. That's like, is that your favorite case?
Well, kind of. But that question, the answer to that question would have changed like before and after this review.
So there's a hint. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Define R5 is kind of Fractal's fancy case, has all the drive bays in it. You know, it's got like 8 3.5-inch drive bays. You know, it's fully reconfigurable. All those drive bays can come out for radiators and stuff. It's a really nice case. It's actually what's under my desk right now. It's got my primary system in it. So the Define S, I guess, is there, you know, what happens when they take their scalpel to the Define R5 and they say, you know, what can we cut out of this? You know, make it a little cheaper, you know, maybe keep most of the performance, make it more accessible. So, what they did with this thing was really interesting. So, like, they took a lot of the fancy stuff on the R5 out. Like, the drive bay, the reconfigurable drive bays and stuff are gone, just completely gone. If you look inside this thing, like the space where drive bays, what's distinctive about it is, if you look inside it, where the space where the drive bays usually go in a mid tower, on this, it's completely empty. You know, so it's just open space from front to back. So they say, you know, there are two reasons for this that they give officially. You know, one, like this area behind where the drive cages would usually go, this is perforated so that you can put a water cooling reservoir or pump there. You know, you can put a radiator there with like double thick fans or something, and it's not going to get in the way of anything. So ostensibly, it's easier to water cool or liquid cool. That rationale, you know, then you look at the price tag. You know, this is a $75 case. You know, so maybe the rationale is, you know, let's make water cooling easier, but you know, I don't know how many people are going to be buying a $75 case and putting a custom water cooling loop in it.
Well, this one would be a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good candidate.
But
it's
also,
kind of a
like,
unique product.
It could be a general case that's just a little cheaper, right?
Right, yeah. That's really what I think this is. It's just it's a missile targeted at the heart of the market in that sense. Because, so, you know, you move around to the other side of the motherboard tray, you see, you know, they've got like just 3.5-inch drive sleds on the back. Here, they screw into the back of that tray thing. You know, so that's unique. Like, I haven't seen that before. It kind of took, like, the 2.5-inch drive sled concept and scaled it up. You know, you can see that they have the cable routing and stuff, cable routing grommets, the big CPU cooler cut out. You know, all this is pretty much table stakes, but it's a really nice case. Like, just like the Define R5, cable routing is easy because of those grommets. There's plenty of space behind the motherboard. You know, so they didn't cut out, or, you know, just like they didn't cut too deeply. You know, it doesn't get worse for it. You know, so otherwise, you know, you put a system in it, like, installation is just as easy as it was in the R5. You know, there's plenty of space, plenty of room for routing cables. You know, I have no complaints there. You know, so that's the basic walk around. Then, you know, we go ahead and put the case through a testing regimen where we heat up, we run the components at idle, then we heat them up with a CPU benchmark, a GPU benchmark, and let it cool down, and we see what happens. You know, most cases perform pretty similarly in this regard these days. We're not, you know, most cases only have like a 1 or 2 degree advantage over each other in any given benchmark. You know, so we're basically just we're looking for outliers in that sense. You know, this case keeps stuff cool about as well as Corsair's, like Obsidian 450D mid tower. It's pretty close to the Define R5, I think. So where the case is, you know, so in that regard, like the cooling works. You know, the fans are the same as in the Define R5. So, you know, they're quiet. They still move a fair amount of air, but they're mostly tuned for quiet. You know, so nothing really gets out of hand temperature-wise. So where cases really distinguish themselves these days, you know, I think in my testing is in just noise levels. Like, so in this regard, like the Define S, like, has a slight advantage over the Obsidian 450D. For example, it's a little louder than the Define R5 because the Define has like this foam-backed front door that the Define S doesn't have. So that, you know, some more hard drive noise escapes. But like, unless you're looking at it with a sound meter sitting in front of it, I don't think you're going to notice that. What really impressed me about this, it's still pretty quiet in operation generally, but like one thing that happens in my test systems from time to time is I put my test hard drive in, let the system run for a while, and some cases like get this really loud, piercing buzz going. This case didn't do that, and it's actually the first case I've tested that didn't do that. I don't know whether it's the hard drive mounting or whatever, so I was like, I was running the system, I was testing it, I'm like, is it going to buzz? Is it going to buzz? It never does. So that, for just a $75 case, I guess, to come along and do that, I guess that's impressive to me for whatever reason, because it's not annoying. It never sticks out. Like occasionally the Define R5, it does get this sort of piercing buzz noise going when the hard drives are running, and I have to press my foot against it, or, tap it, make it stop. So it's weird that the cheaper case does this, but it's a nice bonus, So
yeah, I mean that's the thing about this, right? Is it's distinctive because of that lack of drive bays in there.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's interesting because unless you have like unusual storage needs, or you really want an optical drive, you can build a really nice system without more than what they allow here, right? Which is you can put and mounting the drives around back they're accessible there. You just pull the panel off, right? Yeah, right. It's not a bad arrangement, and you could put what 3.5 inch hard drives,
3.5.
2.5 inch SSDs,
right? Or put all 2.5 inch storage in it.
Now, if you do that, how's the cable routing picture when you got all? I guess it looks like it wouldn't be that bad.
Like there's this big, bend in the panel there. So like, so long as you're using straight SATA cables, there's plenty of room. I think. I don't think that would get very. It just can't get very nasty. Like in the R5, because there are 8 bays, it could get nasty there. Mm-hmm. But with this, since there are only 3 to 5, like the potential for messiness is not that great. So, yeah, I think this in general, like this case, they have just enough storage mounting to make this like practical for the market they're trying to hit. So, in general, I'm really happy with it. I like Fractal Design's cases. This one was no exception. Between the performance, it's mostly as quiet as the Define R5. It's mostly as well built. There are a few things missing. Maybe some people like optical drive bays. I know you and I talked about this. Where you still want the Blu-ray burner. Those people might have to step up to the R5. But for most people, like say, they look at the price of the R5 and say, I don't want to spend that much. They can look at or maybe look at the Define S and say, this is a better deal. Yeah. And so between the price, the performance, we said this is worthy of an Editor's Choice Award, which is pretty rare for cases. And, maybe Fractal Design is the first company who's achieved a back-to-back on that front. Yep. So that's the story with that.
Do you think this is headed for the Econobox and the system guide?
I don't know if it's cheap enough. Like, I'm working on the system guide right now. The budget case, we recommend like the Corsair Carbide Series 200R. Like the price of that has gone up, and now there's only a $5 difference between these two cases. Ooh. So I think maybe there's room for it there. But we usually go with a micro ATX. Like the last build we did for the Econobox was a micro ATX system with a.
Dude, this is controversial. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of room to grow in this thing.
Yeah. So it's not that much more expensive. Like, and prices on a lot of other things have fallen. So maybe there's room for it.
All right.
I will have to run the numbers, but I think if it does fit into the Econobox, it's a heck of a case for that purpose. So.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Well, do we have any more reader questions?
I was gonna say, if we have more reader questions, we should take those. And other than that, I think we're probably pretty much.
Yeah. So Selmore asks, what's your favorite or go-to 140mm fan for airflow in a silent optimized case like the Define R5? To be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with aftermarket fans. I think the ones that come with the R5 are really excellent. I don't know that like the fans that people usually go to after like stock fans, I guess, are Noctuas. Those are really expensive. Those are like $20 a pop. I don't know that there's like that much. I don't know that there's $20 or $40 of improvement once you total up how much a Noctua fan would cost, unless you're like really sensitive to it. So I'd just say go ahead, leave like the Fractal Design dynamic fans in it. They're good. So, anything else? Selmore has another question. He says, "Did you watch or hear about Linus Tech Tips video about G-Sync and FreeSync without VSync? Apparently, G-Sync is better without VSync at 40 FPS range, and better with VSync at the 130 FPS range." Have you toyed with that? I don't have a G-Sync monitor here.
I have played with the G-Sync display with the new drivers that allow you to turn VSync off, and what it will do is, this is something that AMD did in FreeSync. When you get outside of the range where the monitor can vary its response time from frame to frame, then it will no longer lock to VSync, and really that's an optimization that's important. For a couple reasons. One is when you're below the 35-40 frame per second range and you're no longer in the variable setup, then you kind of want to get new frame information out right away any way you can, and just spitting out partials that are tearing may be the thing that people want. Above 100 and whatever it is, 20, 444, depending on your display, hertz refresh, if your computer's spitting frames out faster than that, getting the new frame information in like Twitch games where you need to have the fastest information as soon as possible, go ahead and tearing to get new frame information out while the screen is being painted. Even though you get that split, that tear that's ugly looking, some people might want that, is the reason that you would do that. NVIDIA did a thing they told me. I talked to Tom Peterson, who's the head honcho there for a lot of the G-Sync stuff, and has kind of been the sort of public face of it. Tom told me that they did. This is my understanding of what he told me. That AMD's version of turning off VSync and NVIDIA's version are different. What NVIDIA did was above your monitor's refresh rate, they go ahead and tear when you turn off VSync. Below the refresh rate, they continue to work just like they did before, where they have this algorithm that does some predictive stuff to figure out when the next frame is coming and repaints if it's got time to do it before the next frame comes. And it's a smart algorithm, and it's good behavior, and it makes sense for them to continue doing that. And I believe that would mean it would not tear even with VSync disabled below the monitor's minimum refresh, although I haven't played with it enough to confirm that. I played with it a little. I don't think that what Tom told me really tracks with what he's reporting from this video. The guys at Linus Tech Tips are great, and maybe they figured something out that I haven't, so I don't know. But my sense of it is that G-Sync wouldn't change below 40 hertz or whatever your minimum is, and above, like, it would tear, and then you just have to make a qualitative judgment about whether you like tearing on your display at really high refresh rates. I would not. I do not. I'm anti-tearing in that case. If I got a 7 milliseconds interval between frames on 144 hertz display, I'm happy to wait that long to maintain the integrity of those frames. Tearing doesn't do it for me. So I think that's the answer, but I haven't seen the video.
All right. I don't see any other reader questions.
Okay.
Someone asks, will GDDR... No, it's not GDDR. Will DDR4 make the Core i7 6700K worth getting over the i7 4790?
That's the question about Skylake.
Yeah.
I think we'll have an answer to that before, like, you could buy it, but I don't have the answer yet. And, based on what we know from the X99 platform, DDR4 memory is not super compelling. And even try this. Go from a dual channel memory config to a quad channel memory config, which is what you do when you go from like a Haswell to a Haswell E, from a 4790K to a 5960X. And you really don't see many benefits in regular user workloads. Gaming doesn't need more memory bandwidth, generally speaking. There are specific things that you can do where memory bandwidth is an issue, but it's literally like our scientific computing benchmarks for computational fluid dynamics or shotgun proteomics analysis, where we see more memory bandwidth, this got faster as a result. So I honestly don't think that a new memory type with more bandwidth is a huge deal. What it does give you is a future. DDR4 can scale up in terms of total bandwidth that it provides. It can do so at lower voltage and lower power, and potentially over time, or even right away actually, some of the ways that it allows memory to be addressed can reduce access latency some in certain workloads. So it looks like a win, but I seriously doubt, based on everything we've seen from X99, that it's going to be one of those things where you go buy a new system because of the memory subsystem being different.
My hunch is, if there's a reason to buy Skylake, it's not going to be the memory subsystem.
No,
so.
I think we're all hoping for more instructions per clock and more clock speed, and a nice combination of those two that leads to a good performance bump, because we haven't had one for a little while. So, okay.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a good stopping point.
I think we've done enough. We've probably done more than enough, but thanks to guys in the chat who are here, who stuck with us, watched live. Thanks to everybody who's listening. And once more, thanks to Jordan Drake for coming on and for many years of a great podcasting. We're going to try to carry on without him.
Yeah,
it hurts, but
it does.
We'll do our best. And so, maybe. I don't know. Maybe somebody else can make some cheesy jokes for us. I'm working on that dad humor. We'll get that going. Jordan needs to be a dad because he's already got the dad humor down. So I don't know. Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for listening to the Tech Report podcast, and come back next time. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.